Hello, brilliant entrepreneur. It's Tash Corbin here, and welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 215, which means that you can find all the relevant links and show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/215. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you, if I had to start my business over again, these are the things that I would do differently. Now, I've done this type of podcast episode every year since I started my business, and it is so much fun to look at what I would do if I was starting a business from scratch today. So let's jump in. I'm Tash Corbin, and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. As I said in the introduction, I love doing a fresh version of this pod every year. The reason being is that the online business world is changing really rapidly. And when it comes to starting a business, if I give you advice based on what I did when I first started my business back in 2013, without taking those changes into consideration, then I wouldn't often be giving you very good advice. Yes, a lot of the core marketing and messaging strategy has been particularly similar, and I would still give the same advice to this day when you're starting a business, but there are many things that I would do 100% differently. So I want to make sure that I'm upfront with you about what I would do differently if I was starting again today. So, number one, I would definitely look for ongoing mentoring when I first started my business. When I first started, I signed up to work with a business coach in a VIP one-on-one day, and I just had one day with her, and it was 6 hours. And in that 6 hours, we did a lot of amazing theorizing, and we came up with some amazing, great models and ideas. But ultimately, when I went out to implement some of the things that I had learned, and a lot of them didn't work, I had no one to go to get insight and feedback on why hasn't this worked, or what do I do now, or how do I continue to get out there and find new clients. So I invested $4,000 when I first started my business in that one VIP day. I would definitely not do that again. Instead, I would look for either a group program or an ongoing mentoring package where I could work with someone and go out and do some homework, do some work behind the scenes, and then come back and get feedback on what I had done, and also get redirection if something I tried didn't necessarily work. Because I did all of my coaching and mentoring with a business mentor when I first started my business in one go, it meant that it was all based on theory. And so when I went out and started trying these things out in the online business world, because she wasn't familiar with the type of people that I wanted to work with, and she didn't have a lot of experience or connections in that space, when I tried some of the strategies that she had recommended, they didn't actually work. Now, I can see upon reflection why they didn't work, and over time I learned what was going to work for my target market and my ideal clients, but I didn't have the benefit of having ongoing check-ins with a mentor over an extended period of time, and that would have made such a difference to my first 6 months in business in particular. Number two, I definitely wouldn't try to DIY my website. And I say this every time I do this type of podcast episode, but it was such a silly idea on my part. Now, granted, back then, we didn't have a lot of the awesome tools that we have these days. Squarespace wasn't a thing. And so we didn't have a lot of the tools that you could use to DIY your website. But even now, if I was starting my business from scratch today, I would not get behind the scenes of my website and try and DIY it. I would just wait until I could put aside enough money from sales in my business to build that website. When I first started my business, I DIY'd my website. It wasn't really ready when I first started. I think it was up about a month or two into my business being started. But actually, I didn't get a single sale through my website until I was 5 months into my business journey. And I did some big website updates about 4 or 5 months in, and I actually ended up hiring someone to do my website for me because the DIY course that I bought was way too techy for me. But I know for myself and also for the businesses and entrepreneurs that I work with now, that there is no way that you need a website before you can start making sales. I've had clients who've made $20,000, $30,000 in sales before they've ever had a website in their business. So I would hold off on having a website. I'd just use a Facebook page and the free tools that were available to me to get my business off the ground, make some sales, get some money in the door, and really prove what the right messaging was, what the right brand feel was first. And then I'd just hire someone to build me a nice, simple WordPress website. That's how I would do it if I was starting today. Number 3, I would do a business course that had more students in it. So when I think it was about 3 months in after working with that VIP coach for one day, I just tried to work things out myself for a little while. It might have been 2 months in. I then decided I was going to invest in a social media course. Unfortunately, that course only had 5 people in it. And whilst it was great, I made great connections with those people, and 2 of them I ended up being in like a mastermindy thing with, and then we brought in a 3rd person. There weren't enough students in that course in order for me to actually have access to a great ready-made network. And I see a huge difference between the people who, when they first start their business, join a small program versus the people who join something that's got, you know, a good couple of 100 people in it. And it really does open up so many more opportunities for you when you have other peers going through the program with you, and there's a good chunk of them. You don't have to necessarily be partnering up with every single person that's in the program with you when there's only 6 people in there. So I would definitely look for a social media course and a social media marketing course that had more students in it than the one that I joined, because it wasn't really a big enough program to get the networking benefits from it. And I can see that it would have really sped up my business growth, especially in the first 6 to 12 months, if I had had a better network of other entrepreneurial people who were going through courses with me and we saw each other as peers and colleagues. Number 4, when it comes to my marketing, I wouldn't really make any changes. I used Facebook groups to get my first clients and my existing networks. I really just tried a bunch of different things, and when something worked, I doubled down on that strategy. And I'm really proud of myself for how well I got into the groove of online marketing quickly, considering I had 0 online marketing experience when I first started my business. And I got to $20,000 in my 6th month of business. And that was just so phenomenal. And it completely blew me away how quickly and effectively I was able to develop my marketing strategy and my messaging. And that was all just done by me working it out as I went along. I didn't have an ongoing business coach or mentor. The social media course that I did didn't cover organic marketing strategies. It didn't cover messaging or copywriting or any of those sorts of things. I just got really curious about what people were looking for and whether I could meet that need, and started crafting and experimenting with offers and messaging that I thought would be useful and resonant for the people that I wanted to work with. So when it comes to my approach to marketing my business when I first started, I would still do exactly the same things as I did back then. I also, some of the things that I did were things like running webinars. I ran a webinar a month from month 3 onwards for the first 2 years of my business, and I would totally still do that again. Webinars were one of my biggest ways of growing my audience, growing my mailing list, creating trust and connection with people, and eventually converting people into paying clients and working with me. And so when it comes to the way that I marketed, I am just really, really glad that I worked out what was going to be a good fit for me and really resonate with my ideal clients. And my business, it took off, and I'm so grateful that it did. The one thing I would do, and this is number 5, the one thing I would do differently is I would scale those marketing activities and strategies faster. When I first started my business, I did some experimenting with Facebook ads, and I did 3 rounds of Facebook ads, and it was $1,000 budget per round. So I spent $3,000, and this was in month 4, month 5, and month 8 in my business that I did these Facebook ad experiments. And for my $1,000, I got 0 return. And so it made me a bit shy about exploring Facebook ads. The reason why those ads didn't work was I was using really bad strategy, and I hadn't really learnt how to scale my marketing beyond warm audiences. So I needed to really refine my messaging and marketing so that it worked for cold audiences as much as it worked for warm audiences. And also the Facebook ads strategy that I was learning wasn't necessarily being taught by someone who had great experience with getting results for clients. It was just taught by someone who was experimenting themselves and saying, hey, you should try this and you should try that. And they had got some of those things to work for them, but they hadn't got proven results with clients in other industries. So I would be a bit more discerning about where I get my advice in relation to using Facebook ads. And I would definitely scale up faster, especially in terms of Facebook ads and consistent list growth and consistent newsletters to my mailing list. Those things I think would have made a huge compounding interest kind of impact on the ongoing growth of my business. For the first 2 to 3 years of my business, it was 50% easy and fun and playing and dabbling, but 50% of it was sometimes I would get to close to the end of the month and be like, I really need to hustle this month if I want to be able to pay our rent. So there were times where I didn't really create that sustainability of income as quickly as I could have. And I see that it was because I was ready to scale some of my marketing strategies, but I was shy to use ads and I was a bit resistant to being more consistent with my list growth and scheduling things up and those sorts of things. And so it took me a long time to get into the groove of both consistency and investing in paid advertising. And I would do that a lot faster if I had my time again and was starting from scratch today. And then the final thing that I would definitely do different if I had to start my business again is when I first launched the Takeoff program, which is my signature program for helping people start a business. I launched it. I had 13 students in the first round. And then as that first round was coming to an end, I had some of those students saying, oh, I'd really like to do something else with you. This has helped me get clients in the door. I'm really good at my marketing now. What's next? Like, what else do you have for me? And so instead of relaunching the Takeoff program, once I'd finished the first round, I created an entire new program and launched that. And then the only people who really purchased that new program were people who'd done the Takeoff program before. So I actually ended up, I think I only made 6 sales of that program in the first launch of it. Then I did a relaunch to a broader audience. I think I made about 30 sales in the second launch of it, but it was a low cost product. It was $198 from memory. And so it wasn't a sustainable income for me launching that lower cost product. The gold mine was right there in front of me and I ignored it for months and months on end. If I had my time again, I would relaunch the Takeoff program as soon as the first live round had finished, and I would have relaunched it 4 or 5 times before I ever created another product again. I know, looking back, that if I had relaunched the Takeoff program and got it the momentum that it deserved way back then, it would be a much bigger program today. And I am still working on consistently relaunching that Takeoff program and really nailing my messaging, marketing, and launch strategies for that program so that those launches can run on autopilot. I'm really lucky these days when it comes to launching the Takeoff program. All I really do is fill in my launch document, give it to my team, and then turn up and run my webinar. So it is a much easier process for me these days. But I know that if I had done that way back when I first launched the Takeoff program in 2014, it would have been a very different story in terms of the launch and growth trajectory of that program. So there you have the 6 things I would be doing differently, one of them the same, if I was restarting my business from scratch today in 2020. If you're starting a business in 2020 and you would like to get my free training on how to fast track your results, come on over to the show notes for today's episode at tashcorbin.com/215. And you'll see the link to my Fast Track Your Startup training with the show notes for today. The Fast Track Your Startup training goes for an hour and a smidge, and it will help you not only avoid some of the mistakes I made in startup, but also learn from my successes and the successes of the thousands of women I've helped to get their business off the ground and flying through my Takeoff program and one-on-one VIP mentoring. If you have any questions or ahas from today's episode, come on over to the Heart-Centered Soul-Driven Entrepreneurs Facebook group. Use hashtag podcastaha. Let me know that you've been listening to episode number 215 and share your light bulbs, things you're going to do differently, and questions relating to this episode. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. I've been Tash Corbin. You've been a fabulous listener. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.